Ready, Rudolph?
Ready, Santa.
Okay, Rudolph. Full power.
We're opening with a disclaimer. As a collector of a Space Marine force tied to a first founding legion, I can certainly appreciate the position World Eaters fans are in, and the overwhelming hype that comes with the Primarch returning to 40k. Suffice to say, there is a lot of World Eater team spirit that feels good for longtime collectors and those looking to jump on the bandwagon that is undoubtedly full of skulls. However, there are several grievances I have with the World Eaters release. In this video, I'll be spotlighting the issues which I find to be annoying and rage-inducing. Talk about life imitating art. And despite these being my opinions, I can promise you I will ground and qualify my position as I usually do. That is, aiming to do it to the best of my abilities. The issues I have can be best explored by simply looking through the model range, which itself is one of the issues. That being, the range is not just slim, it's small. Altogether, as a World Eaters player, you are graced with 22 unit options, an amount which on the surface seems fairly robust. But 14, more than half of those, are generic units which are available to all of Chaos Space Marines. Note that despite tagging the Demon Prince and Terminators as World Eaters, these are still the same kits available to all. That leaves us with 8 unique units remaining to the World Eaters players. But of those 8 units, the Eightbound and Exalted Eightbound are the same kit with subtle part swaps. And the same is true for Lord Invocatus and the Lord on Juggernaut. So that leaves World Eaters players with 6 unique kits for their army. But, lest we forget, Khorne the Betrayer's model was released in 7th edition. And that leaves us with 5 kits for the grand reimagining of the World Eaters and the arrival of Angron. Please forgive my lack of enthusiasm. Compare this to the Death Guard's release back in 8th edition. 29 units, 16 unique kits. Or compare it to Votan's rollout, a range considered by many to be rather limited, with only 12 units, but all of which were unique kits. The World Eaters release doesn't even have half as many. For Pete's sake, the World Eaters release has the same amount of units as the Black Templars supplement rollout. Granted, 3 of those units are characters, so it isn't necessarily equivalent, but it's still weird I can state it. 5 is just a pitiful number of unique kits for an army, especially so when GW wants to position the God-marked legions as totally separate from the rest of Chaos Space Marines. As it relates to their launch, the World Eaters are being done dirty.
Put some respect on my name. You understand me? When y'all saying my name, put some respect on it.
Disagree? Well, just consider how utterly nonsensical it is to release a character on a mount without a mounted squad unit for that character to pair with.
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
And then there is the lack of bespoke World Eaters Terminators. Terminators are the elite of Space Marine infantry, a standard which is well defined in 30k, with each legion having their own unique Terminators. In 40k, bespoke Terminators for the Godbound legions are a precedent which has been set with the Thousand Sons Scarab Occult and the Death Guard's Blightlord and Death Shroud Terminators, both which continue the narrative threads of their 30k past. With that stated, it should be clear that the absence of such a significant unit really hurts the World Eaters' debut. These 2 lacks are so blatant. So blatant in fact that I wouldn't be surprised at all if GW is saving the other half of what ought to be the full World Eaters release for when a future 10th edition codex drops, where we'll see a unit on Juggernauts, a shooting squad, maybe a reimagined demon engine, and the 40k iteration of the Red Butchers. A rationale for the split release would simply be to have a substantial product release for a subsequent quarter, as GW's gotta keep their stonks moving up. And GW knows the debut of the World Eaters in this 5-kit extravaganza will sell regardless because their IP has an iron grip on their customers. Now, I don't mean to suggest this is done with a sinister intent, and really it's a topic for another video, but 40k, and especially Space Marine Army fandom, almost has something akin to a parasocial relationship to those fans/customers. Now I'm just sharing my off-the-cuff thoughts before they have fully matured, so excuse the muddy exposition. But my point as it relates to this video is GW knows they can launch the World Eaters with an underwhelming amount of unique kits because, if Angron is one of them, it will sell product regardless.
Hear me and rejoice.
So with my grievances around the range explored, let's go through the many unique units of this release. Now when it comes to the range, Angron is great. An excellent interpretation of the design we have seen illustrated throughout the Horus Heresy. It's a model which oozes intimidation and makes a fitting avatar of Wrath. The Berzerkers are also fantastic, a faithful reimagining of the original design. Personally, I'm happy to see they aren't over-designed as is the case on certain Plague Marines. The Jhakals are fine. Did the World Eaters need their own cultist troop? Personally, I don't think so. But I suppose GW is just following the precedent set with the Death Guard and Thousand Sons.
Wow.
Wouldn't it be great if they did that with a much more important unit? Now moving on to the spicier takes. From a model design point of view, I find Lord Invocatus to be underwhelming. He just looks awfully generic for a named character. What are the key differences? I will concede his helmet is fairly unique. He doesn't wear sleeves, and he's got teeth on his toes. And his mount does have a unique headplate and side plates. So, in actuality, there seems to be an adequate amount of part swaps for the unique character variant. But those differences are too subtle. Compare the Virgin Lord on Juggernaut kit to the Chad Beast Boss on Squigosaur kit. This is the golden standard of mounted character kits which also build a named character variant. Look at Lord Invocatus versus Mozrog relative to their generic variants, and you can see the disparity. Where Mozrog has greater uniqueness in his posture, war gear, and overall silhouette. Essentially, Lord Invocatus is far more likely to be presumed to be a generic Chaos Lord on Juggernaut. Excuse me, a World Eater's Lord on Juggernaut. And then there is the elephant in the room. This guy can fly. And here I was thinking it was lame that the Votan's bikes could fly. This Juggernaut's base isn't even off of the ground. Is it too much to consider that if a unit's specialty in the narrative is that it flies, then that should be demonstrable in the design of that model? Because if it isn't, it kinda feels like you're just arbitrarily giving a unit rules because you want it to be strong. But when you consider GW is no stranger to giving units fly, which really shouldn't have it, I think the writing is on the wall here. But let's move on to something much worse. I have a great distaste for the Eightbound. Not only do they feel like the Age of Sigmar Skull Reapers were put through a 40k filter, and not only are these the elite options we have on release as opposed to Red Butchers, and not only are they used to make two separate units which are barely distinct, but the concept behind these guys is just awful. Let's take a look and read some of their flavor from the Warhammer community article. Virtually unrecognizable from the mortal space marines they once were, every member of the Eightbound is each possessed by eight separate demons of Khorne. Sometimes the spirit of an Eightbound World Eater can even emerge triumphant, becoming one within the Eight Neverborn sharing its physical form. These are the exalted Eightbound, even more dangerous and demonic than others of their kind. What an absolute wankfest this is. Now you might be thinking, hey, that sounds pretty cool. But let me ask you, what does that mean for this guy? What does it mean for this guy right here? Not sure? I'll tell you. It means he's worse. He's only possessed by one demon. What a weak-ass bitch. Don't you see? GW wants you to like this one. This one is better. In fact, he's 8 times betterer. It's such a dogshit design philosophy. Have your new characters shit all over the old ones in order to prop them up. And to add insult to injury, what does this do for the Word Bearers? The Word Bearers are the first heretics. They are the origin point for possessed Space Marines back in 30k. Essentially, possessed Marines are their thing. which I know sounds like a juvenile thing to claim.
It's just swords were your thing and guns were mine. But I guess we're both doing guns now. I just didn't know that.
But consider this from a design point of view. Well, specifically, a faction identity point of view, where these specialisms add crucial distinction between the 18+ subfactions of Marines in the setting. Now, that is not to say no other legion should have Possessed. After all, Possessed have been a unit available to all Chaos Space Marine legions. But, with the context of faction identity in mind, I would say Word Bearers Possessed should be a cut above. This was achieved simply by the Word Bearers having a stratagem which would allow their Possessed to do just that. But now, how can they? How can Word Bearers have the best Possessed, thus demonstrating their specialty, when the World Eaters have Marines possessed by 8 demons? It's just so fucking stupid. Not only does this cuck the Word Bearers out of their specialism, but it does so to such an extreme degree that it borders on parody. And for this to be course corrected, the Word Bearers would need a specialist possessed unit where each Marine is possessed by what? 10 demons? Just pathetic. Well, that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed this brief dissection of sorts on the World Eaters release. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons, Julius Maximus, as well as the others who help keep the dream alive. So what are your thoughts on the World Eaters release? Let me know what you think in the comments. Anyways, there are buttons for liking, sharing, and subscribing, so press the buttons you want to press, and I'll catch you in the next one.